Hello and welcome to the WPAOG podcast. This episode features an interview with Sue Irons Beachler, West Point class of 1989 and veteran service officer. Sue received her commission as a Signal Corps officer from West Point in 1989. She is a Desert Shield and Desert Storm veteran and has earned the Bronze Star Medal and Senior Parachutist badge. Upon completion of company command in Germany, Sue returned to her hometown, Canton, South Dakota, and has served as the Lincoln County Veterans Service Officer since 2015. Sue has also served as a WPAOG volunteer in various positions, supporting classes, societies, SIGSs, and her region since 2017. In this episode, Sue talks about the path to becoming a veteran service officer, her involvement within the WPAOG, and the importance of claiming the VA benefits West Point graduates are entitled to. Please enjoy this interview between veteran service officer Sue Irons Beachler, West Point class of 1989, and your host, retired Colonel Greg Gadsden, class of 1989.
Greetings, Sue. What a pleasure and an honor to be here. My name is Greg Gadsden, USMA class of 89. I'm here with my classmate, Sue Irons Beachler. I'm super excited about this podcast. It's actually my first podcast as an interviewer. And when you asked me to do it, I was certainly honored to be able to interview you because of what you're doing. And we'll get into that as the podcast goes on. But before we get started, what I'd like you to do is really just tell us about yourself and what began your journey to West Point.
Well, first, I want to say thank you, Greg, for doing this because that was something I felt that it was important. If I'm going to be talking about veteran services, that one, I should be talking to a veteran and then also someone that has experienced, the veteran services, VA, and all of that goes with that. So thank you. I'm a little starstruck because, you are kind of famous and but I've known you since 1985. So we have that. We go way, way back. So about me, I didn't come to West Point, maybe like a lot of people do. I actually wanted to be in the Air Force, but I happened to also apply to West Point, and then I ended up getting my appointment there, never visited, didn't know anything really about the Army. My first time seeing West Point was on our day. So that started it. I was a girl from a small town in South Dakota and really didn't have any idea what I was getting myself into. So my first year was a shock. Best time I ever had, summer of my life was at Buckner, met a lot of our classmates. And that's really where I decided, West Point is where I need to be. And so I continued on. I studied, my degree was in leadership, which I felt was going to be useful. If I'm going to be, leading soldiers someday, I thought that would be a good thing. I also going into West Point, didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I also knew that the military would tell me what to do. So that was another thing. After West Point, I commissioned as a signal officer, spent time at Fort Bragg, 18th Field Artillery Brigade, and that's who I went to Desert Storm with. And then 50th Signal Battalion, and then I went to Germany with the 3rd Infantry Division.
Rock of the Marne.
Yeah, Rock of the Marne. Battalion staff time as Assistant S3, Battalion S1, and then Company Commander. And then when I PCS from Germany, that is when I left the Army. I met my husband, and we decided to raise a family. And so took that very seriously, and we have 5 children. And 3 of our 5 children are on active duty in the Army right now.
Well, it sounds like you create a legacy of service, and we're certainly get more into that and certainly proud of that. Just a little bit more about yourself. Tell me, what are your hobbies? What are your pastimes? What gets you fired up and excited?
I would have to say, one of my hobbies, and that's really it started at West Point, was running. So I still do that. Definitely not fast anymore, but I enjoy that. That's an outlet for me. Another thing I really enjoy doing is helping. I've done, those personality studies, and that is a trait that comes out over and over again. And so, I think as a leader, as an officer in the Army, you're helping, you're leading, you're helping your soldiers, and you're helping your peers. And so when I left the Army, I felt I needed needed to continue to do that, of course. We've been a lifetime of service is what, we are instilled to do as West Point graduates. And so I became very active in my community, volunteered for a lot of different things, boards, at our church, at our children's schools. One of the things that I did do was become an EMT. I'm back in South Dakota now, and we have a volunteer ambulance service here in our community. And so I did that for 8 years. Really enjoyed that, learned so much. And as our kids started getting older and busier, then that was when I decided that I needed to focus on our kids more. And then that is when the job that I'm currently in, I have 2 jobs, so we'll talk about that a little bit later too. But my current job, a little over 8 years ago, I became a veteran service officer here in my county in South Dakota. And that is, something that I hadn't, after I left the Army, I just couldn't figure out exactly what it was that I needed to be doing. And this position came open in my county, and I didn't really know anything about a veteran service officer and what one of those even was. But it was, the job description somewhere, and it said helping veterans get their VA benefits. And I'm like, well, I like to help. And so it seemed like everything that I had done from the time I left the Army, actually before, even from West Point up until then, everything that I had done led me to becoming a veteran service officer. So what makes me tick is helping.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. And that really kind of lays the groundwork for what we're about to talk about now, because what I'd like you to share is because of this tremendous lifelong of service to so many communities, not just your local community, but our veteran community, how that led you to being on the AOG team. So could you talk to me about how you got involved with AOG and what has led us up to this point in your evolution within AOG?
That's also an interesting story. So I have my good friend, Kathy Kilner, who was the former director of class services. She and I were B3 bandits together as cadets. And my daughter, she graduated in 2020. But of course, her R Day and A Day were in 2016. And I was staying with Kathy for both of those. And she and I were having a conversation, and she had been in her position for about a year, and I had been in my job as a VSO for about a year. We were talking about things, and I had all kinds of good ideas. And I thought that, because I didn't really know anything about AOG, but, as I was learning more, I was like, well, they should do this or they should do that. And then I even asked, well, do they have veteran services? Because, all of us that graduate are veterans and could, potentially be eligible for veteran benefits. And she was looking at me like, if you have all these good ideas, why don't you do something about it? And she said, I've got an idea for you. And it just so happened our class, it was our turn to have a class advisor on the advisory council at AOG. And so Warren, our class president, reached out to me and said, I understand that you are now going back to West Point a little more often because you have a daughter there. And I was wondering if you'd be interested in being our class advisor. So that is what started my time at AOG. And I didn't know anything really about what AOG did at that time. One of the things, though, I've always said, if I'm going to be a member of a board or do anything, I'm not just doing it because I'm saying I'm on this, council or board or whatever. I'm going to do it. So I went to every meeting. I learned, and the more I learned, the more excited I got about what our association does for us. And so while I was there, we have our different subcommittees. And one of the subcommittees that I happened to be on was the Alumni Support Committee. And we meet to talk about how can we better support, how can we, being AOG, what can be done to better support our graduates. And as a VSO, I'm always thinking veteran services. And so, I guess at that time I started, talking about it with other people. And I even, once people find out you're a VSO, they like to ask you questions. And so
I'm one of them, remember.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. But one of the things I didn't realize that I wasn't the only ignorant one about what is a VSO, what are veteran benefits. A lot of our classmates, a lot of our peers, a lot of, younger grads and the older grads don't even know about their benefits that they have. And so I started to feel very strongly that this is something we should be educating our graduates and their families about. And then how can we do this? And should we have a program? And so I became a class advisor, and I did that from 2017 to the end of 2019. Took a year off, and then I became an advisor again for the North Central Region Society. Now I'm finishing up my time there as a society advisor. And so I've had in those 6 years, this has taken some evolution to get to where we are today with having a veteran services program.
Now that you're in the saddle, could you describe maybe a vision of expectation that you'd like to see and how this is going to strengthen the AOG network as a whole?
So our vision at AOG is to be the most highly connected alumni body of any college, any university. And how we can do that is by strengthening the bonds that we had from when we were cadets to being on teams or to being on different clubs, whatever companies, your cadet companies, your classes, all of that. And how do we do that is by, after you graduate, how do we stay connected? That happens through social media, that happens through reunions and different things. But what makes those connections meaningful is showing that we do care. I care about our classmates, as I know you do. And, sometimes, it's just as simple as if there's a need and we can help somebody, or we can collectively as a group help somebody that's in need. That is what we want to continue to have. It's that spirit of service again. And so what I can see AOG doing by helping, if we can help one person at a time, that will spread and we will all be connected in that vision of helping each other and helping, in celebrating successes, helping each other through tough times. And veteran services is just one of those things that we can use to do that in our program that we're starting.
What I'd like to share is, we lost a classmate, Dave Harris, a couple of months ago, and that still hasn't really sunk in for me personally. He was a prep school classmate as well, but a few of our classmates were able to get to see him fortunately before he passed. And one of our classmates, Gus Lee, and I were talking and sharing some of our challenges. I'm dealing with prostate cancer. That's the first time I think I've said that publicly. And Gus had shared that he had dealt with that as well. And that's how, we really reconnected, because he talked to me about, the services and making sure my records. And, it's just the benefits that we have earned that we can perhaps pass down to our families are important. It's so important to make sure that our records are documented and accurate. And Gus told me that you were invaluable in helping him get his records up to speed. And then, of course, you remember me connecting with you. And so I'm really proud that you have me in your hands, and that I don't need to worry about, things getting kind of lost in the bureaucracy. I share that for all veterans to understand that please don't think you have a claim or this is not important. These are benefits that you've earned and your family has earned with their service. And it's important for you to take time to use the services of a veteran service officer. And I'm really excited about the power of this program because, as Sue said, every one of us is a veteran. And that's another common link that we have that will strengthen our line, as our motto said. So I just want to publicly say thank you for looking out and taking care of me and my family. I just want to acknowledge that. What do you see as perhaps the next steps as we develop this program within AOG?
Well, first of all, Greg, thank you for sharing that. That's really, really important that everybody hears that message that you just shared. I think tying into what you talked about, our next steps for the program are going to be education. And I think as West Point graduates, it's really hard to say that you need help or you are going to get a benefit or any of that. And a lot of times what I hear is, well, I don't need it. And there are others that need it more than I do. And, there's and. But I think what's important is, like you said, the government needs to know what's going on with us. What was the impact of our military service on us? And getting your records straight and making sure that that's understood, especially, if it's, something that causes you to have a disability now later in life. I would say, going back to my 3 children that are currently serving in the Army today, if we don't tell the government the impact of our military service, and we do that by either filing a claim or using VA healthcare. If we don't do that, it's not going to make things better for our future generations of graduates and soldiers. We must use them. It's our duty to file a claim or to use our VA benefits, and which we have earned. We raised our right hand to support and defend the Constitution. And in turn, we went where we were told to go. We did what we were told to do. And we did all of that. But the handshake that the government gave us is when you're all done, we're going to take care of you. And so by taking care of us, those are our VA benefits, which we have earned. But I think the most important reason why we need to, and this is what our program is hoping to do, is to educate graduates and family members. But we have to, if we can make a difference for one person, if we can save a life by getting somebody that's struggling access to benefits that will help them, then we've made a difference. And so we can do that one encounter at a time, one person, one conversation at a time, and that will spread. And that's how, again, connecting all of us, the long gray line, so that we can help each other, we can grip hands and do that. And so this is a brand new enhancement. It's just me. And when I said I have 2 jobs, my full-time job right now is in South Dakota. I am working for AOG remotely and part-time in that capacity. So we're growing the program and we're starting it, but what we want to do is do it right. And so we're not going to try to do everything, all the things all at once. We want to build a great foundation, and education is going to be the key to that.
Well, not to get any ideas, but one of the things I kind of talk about is, as I look back at our journey, is, first of all, I've heard someone describe there are occupational hazards to our military service, and some more than others, obviously. But from an education standpoint, we can look at educating the cadets before they graduate, not at the last minute, but really a real education, because this is a journey. And, for some of us, the journey is relatively short, and for others, it's quite long. But when you think about a lifetime of service, for most of us, we will serve longer out of uniform than in uniform, if we're lucky. And it's just important that we stay connected and stay truthful, stay honest. Like I said, you help other people by reporting some of your challenges, because those may be indicators of a larger problem, some kind of exposure or whatever. And so it really is our duty and responsibility, not just for ourselves and our family, but for our greater community of service members.
I agree completely. And, it's interesting that you bring up cadets. I just had a cadet reach out to me this week and said, could you come and talk to our class about veteran benefits and veteran services? Because, that is something we need to understand, not only for ourselves, but how we can help our soldiers that we're going to be leading. And this was the class of 2025. So this was a cow. And I was just, for someone that, at that stage in their cadet career, to be thinking like that and to have, the classmates come together and ask for that, I thought that was really impressive. And that is absolutely something that we want to do, because if we can start that culture now and they can take that out into the Army, that's what West Pointers do. We go out and we're not the whole Army, but we can get out there and we can make a difference. And so with our young leaders going out, that's what they can do. Because as a veteran service officer from all of the branches of the services, I hear no one told me anything about VA benefits.
Absolutely. That's right.
I said, well, don't they have the TAPS program, and don't they have all, yeah, but no one, they just say, just go see the VA when you leave here. And that's all that they're told. And it's not. So we can start our young leaders going out and taking care of their soldiers that are ETSing or that are retiring, and saying, make sure you are, you're getting your records straight. That's what it is. It's really about records and looking at education and understanding that whole process. I think that's going to be very important.
Well, Sue, is there a parting message or or something that you want to double tap to make sure that we emphasize?
I sure do. So again, it's just me right now. I have a team at Alumni Services that is helping on the technology side, but what we're developing is a landing pad, where graduates can come to for information all in one space. And the other thing that we are going to be working on is I will be working with classes and societies because each era is different. And if we can cultivate within those classes and societies somebody that has internal knowledge of veteran services, whether they've just gone through the process themselves and they are knowledgeable because of recent experience, or maybe they themselves are veteran service officers. I know I am not the only veteran service officer graduate that is out there, but if we can create that network within those already established groups, societies and classes, or shared interest groups, or teams, or whatever, and get we know what that network is, so that when a graduate reaches out to AOG through the Grads Helping Grads program, we will then be able to touch somebody that we know and say, you're the expert in South Dakota. Can you help this graduate that needs your assistance there? And because they know who is good to talk to in South Dakota, we can help with that. So that is something that's coming. And the other thing that I really want to point out too is some people don't even know where to start, where they're, how do I get veteran services? And I would say one thing is find a veteran service officer just to at least talk you through how to access your benefits, or to just say, here, let me help you. And then they take it from there. The veteran service officer does. Don't try to do this alone, because it is, as a government entity, the VA is the largest healthcare system out there, I believe, in the world. And so there's some long roads and some red tape maybe that has to be passed through, but don't try to do it on your own. And the other thing too, I will say, is don't pay for somebody to do this. These are benefits you've earned. You shouldn't have to pay somebody to get those benefits for you. And it's important to vet who you're talking to. Make sure you feel comfortable and trust them. Are they accredited? That's something that is also very important. And that's what our program, we are going to be, developing partnerships with veteran service organizations that have VSOs that are accredited, along with the society and class veteran service liaisons, I think is what I want to call them. But we want to be able to utilize the partnerships that we are working on developing to help our graduates and try to streamline that process as best we can. Again, it's a very, big ship that we're trying to get a handle on, but that would be probably one of the main things I would say.
That's a great vision, and I certainly appreciate it. What should we expect in the near term?
Well, that's a good question. When I became employed by AOG at the end of March of this year, this seemed like such a long ways away, but now we're almost here. And the program is going to be, we'll say launched, but it's going to be introduced to the Long Gray Line on Veterans Day of this year. As I had mentioned, we are going to be reaching out to societies and classes and any graduate that has any experience or expertise in the veteran services arena, because I want to know who those people are so that we can leverage the Long Gray Line to help others that are in need of veteran services. And if we don't know who they are, we can't leverage them. So I'm working with class services and alumni services so that we can find those people. And then once we know who we're talking to, there's an education aspect to that. And that will be talking about, because there are so many VA benefits that are out there, and what, just even to know what those are and how to access those. And so that is something that our program is going to do, is to help those that have, reached out to us and make sure that we're all understanding the same things. So that would be also something that is important. The biggest ask that I would have is, as our program rolls out and we reach out through our class services, alumni services, and our advisory council and our advisors within the advisory council, is that start thinking about how and who are the people that have expertise in this area. In addition to that, think about the people who are in need of veteran services as well, because that is where, again, the long gray line and the strength of the long gray line, we can, a lot of people don't want to ask for help, but if you can offer that or just say, hey, I know a way that we can figure this out. Let's do this together. I think a perfect example of that would be, I have two. So our veterans that have been exposed to toxins, the VA has identified many conditions that if you were exposed to a certain toxin, for example, Agent Orange, if you were a Vietnam veteran, or if you served in the Middle East, our burn pits and other toxins, if you served in those areas, there's a specific list of conditions that the VA has identified that if you have these, you are entitled to benefits. A lot of people don't know that. The VA has educated veterans, but still, I'm finding people don't know that. And so that's another way where, as a class leader, if your class went to Vietnam, make sure that everybody is aware of those benefits. And if there are surviving spouses, again, that's another group of people that's very, very important that we reach out to. And that was my second group. I think they feel like they've been left behind, but they may be eligible for benefits too. And that's where our leadership within our classes and societies, or not even the leadership, just getting the word out. And that's, I guess, my biggest ask from everybody. If they can do that, I always say one veteran at a time, one surviving spouse at a time, because it makes a difference. And the ripple effect will be tremendous if we can do that.
Well, Sue, first of all, let me thank you again for the honor of interviewing you. I'm proud to be able to do so, and really glad that we've got a chance to tighten our circles again. And I know that we'll do a much better job of staying in touch. But more importantly, I want to thank you for your leadership and your continued service. You're really living up to our motto of "We Strengthen the Line." And I can't personally thank you enough personally, but for all of our classmates, all of our veterans, all of our grads, I want to thank you and what your community does for veterans and families every day. So God bless you. And until we meet again.
Thank you, Greg. Thanks for your inspiration.
This has been a production of the WPAOG Broadcast Network. Please take a moment to rate and review the show and join us each week for a new episode. Thank you for listening.